United Grind Society presents The Turntable, where we discuss everything relevant to hip-hop. I'm your host, Haiku, and with me today, we got some of my favorite peoples. We have Mr. Speed from Rhyme Royal. We got Siege from E.com.
You're welcome.
We have Garb's Infinite. And our special guest today with us on the panel is Mr. Vice Soul Electric from United Grind.
What's good?
Family's in the building.
What's
How you
good?
feeling, man?
Boys.
Well, on this episode, we're going to discuss if artists should feel obligated to speak on social issues, right? I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on in the world on a regular basis, but, you know, especially with everything going on right now with the pandemic and politics and school shootings and guns and this, that, and the third, I think it's a very appropriate subject that we talk about. Before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by the new hot single from United Grind, M.A.M.N, featuring Benny the Butcher, and produced by today's special guest, Vice Soul Electric. Let's
United Grind proudly presents.
We ain't affiliated, they either think we slanging, or that we either banging, but it's just me and my niggas. Said it's just me and my niggas. Hey. United Grind. Griselda.
Hey, that's a hot song, man. That's a hot track.
Make it move, y'all. Look.
You did your business.
No.
Nice. So, hey, everyone's checking that out. If you like it as much as I do, make sure that you're streaming that on all digital platforms. Make sure you check that out. Support. All right, so let's get into the subject, right? Should artists feel obligated to discuss social issues? I mean, who should and who shouldn't speak? How can misspeaking be problematic? And do you personally speak on social issues? I want everybody to get a chance to talk, you know, and I want to start off, actually, Speed, I want to start off with you real quick. You know, should artists feel obligated to kind of talk about social issues?
Stupid ones? Probably no. Define stupid.
Right.
But yo, like I look at it like this, like, you know, hip hop has had a history of artists talking about how, you know, their lives and struggles and stuff has cleared the way for their music, like made the path for their music, like colored their music. So if that's the case, it seems impossible to me that an artist that actually made it wouldn't do something with that. I mean, everybody does it, but it seems like, yes, if you made a history of your art being about struggle and about come up, then yes, you should be, you know, a percentage of what you have to say should go towards the next person not having that struggle, if you really believe that struggle is unjust or whatever the fuck.
So let's follow that up with you, Vice. You work with a lot of different artists, right? And then, you know, I've seen you work, I've seen you operate, and a lot of times, you know, you got the stage performance, right? You have all that, but there's a lot of setting up and a lot of conversations that happen behind closed doors when you're talking to artists, right? So, you know, them talking to you is one thing. Them talking about, you know, to the public or on Twitter is another. You know, what's your opinion on all that?
I think that Speed, I'm sort of on the same wavelength as Speed. It's like, I guess everybody has a brand. So I guess at the end of the day, people are trying to be consistent with their brand from the beginning to the end. So if you are a street rapper, if you're going to touch on political subjects, just don't try to go too far. Don't put yourself in a pit where you don't know what the hell you're talking about, because it's affecting all of us in some way, shape, or form. We all have an opinion. Everything that's going on is affecting us. We all have our own opinion. You know, we're all getting bombarded by the same news, the same situations, the same. We all see it, and we all are a part of it. My thing is, just don't try to speak on something that you don't know about. Don't try to speak on a subject that you don't have a lot of knowledge. Is my main thing, and that's when people mess up. Like if you try to get too deep into politics, you don't follow it until something pops up and something happens. I think that's when you can end up looking stupid. But to answer your question of whether or not people should step up, I think in general, yeah, because your fan base is being affected by it. So you should, touch base with your fan base and see how it's affecting them.
Okay. Garbs, I'm coming to you next. All right.
Okay.
And I already know the answer, but I want you to give me a little bit of depth on it, right? I've seen you're pretty active on Facebook in giving your opinion. All right. So the question, do you personally speak on social issues? I don't have to ask that question, but I do want to ask why you feel it's necessary to speak on that. What moves you to do that?
Well, first and foremost on this subject, I think that there's multiple layers to this, at least I believe there to be. Me personally, I think, if you go back throughout my musical history with the things and certain songs and records that I've made and released, I've always tried to touch on a lot of different things because I think that it's important to actually represent something and to represent some sort of consciousness, some sort of positive change, some sort of growth and awareness to especially in a manner that can relate to a variety of different types of people. I think that's important to grow awareness with a variety of different types of people, a bunch of different types of hip hop fans and within our community. Now, on the other side of this part, I kind of stay in it. I kind of feel in the same way as Speed and Vice, because at the same time, a few years ago, I think it was A$AP Rocky who had mentioned that he just making music. He doesn't want to get into it. I think it was him. Now, even though we may have our own personal feelings about that, of him saying that, we also have to look at it as, okay, if somebody doesn't feel that they can speak on these things or don't want to, or they don't think that that's what they represent, that we have to respect that at the same time, because do we really want that person
representing
the voice of us all with this intense and large popularity that these individuals have? You know what I'm saying? They may misspeak. So
right.
I think that there's multiple layers. Like I'm not mad at somebody just understanding who they are as an artist, as a human, as a person. But at the same time, though, I think they do have a responsibility to speak up in some sort of way to let everybody know that, hey, this is where I stand, even if they can't 100% vocalize it properly.
So I respect the way that you approach a lot of subjects on Facebook. I've seen you work. Vice, very similar. I mean, when I can tell, like when you've had enough, you're like, look, I got to talk on it. I got to speak about it. Speed, I ain't going to talk to you, but you're the same way. Very, very opinionated, and I appreciate it. I'm saving this question for you, Siege, because you and I, we are boys, and I know that we talk a lot. And I know that you can be upset about things and not put it up on Facebook a lot of times, right? So what issues, you kind of explain your philosophy behind that, and also what issues could you not stand silent on? And, since you are an artist, I think it's appropriate to get your opinion, on these things. So what do you think?
From an artist standpoint, anybody that asks me, I'm more than willing to discuss it, but I don't often openly just throw it out there like that, because there's a lot of conversations I don't feel like getting into with ignorant people. But to jump off of what Garb said, as far as A$AP Rocky, that takes me back to Charles Barkley when he said, I'm not a role model. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be a role model. I'm not a role model for your kids, but you are. There's a such thing as being in business too big to fail, meaning the company is so large that we can't afford to let this company fail. And I feel artists can get to a point where they're too big not to have input. So let's take Jay-Z, for instance. Jay-Z is so large and so influential, whether he wants to or not, he has to speak on certain things just because of his status in the culture. The other day, my wife was talking about Beyonce. My wife is not a particular fan of Beyonce, but she said when Beyonce started speaking on certain issues and her image was shifting a little bit, towards, she said, you know what, I really respected that. And I started liking her, from that standpoint. And now she doesn't talk about it anymore. So there's a fine line. So she went back to, not feeling her. So there's a fine line. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself in. You don't want to be the voice for everybody. But there are certain people that they are obligated. And then there are certain people that should never speak. And those people, we already know that. But as far as I'm concerned, as an artist, I've always had trouble putting political or social issues into my lyrics. It's just difficult for me for whatever reason. I can sit and talk to you all day long, and I'm fine with that. But as far as reflecting it in my music, that's been an issue. So there's other people like Common, Talib, Most Def. I think those dudes, because of the type of music that they make, they're almost obligated in certain instances because of the music that they do make. And then there's certain people that the music they make shouldn't, if that makes any sense.
Who? Give us an example.
Give a name.
Let me drop a name real quick. Since Haiku's been listening to this dude all week and made me listen to him, I don't want to particularly take any political advice from the baby. He has his lane, but I'm not really, because of what he does, it's going to be real hard for him to try to be political or socially conscious.
See, this is the thing I think that is sort of like a gray area. And I also want to throw something else in. So I'll just put it all in one real quick. Okay. I knew you probably were going to say somebody like the baby. But this is the thing. All of these guys don't have to be Don Lemon to give their opinion. Because this is the thing about it, is that a guy like the baby, a guy like, for Christ's sake, 6ix9ine, he had 2 million people on this damn IG today. They have influence, if nothing else.
Agreed.
And they have influence over regular kids who are conscious. So I think that even those guys should be responsible. And the other point that I would...
Vice, they're not responsible, period, though. So they're not responsible in everyday regular life. So we can't expect them to be responsible on something important.
Well, maybe with that...
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you good.
You can classify Baby and 6ix9ine in the same classification. But one thing that I will say is I think that it would be cool, and I think that it would make a difference, like if, say, the baby did say something, because these are the artists that have the ear of the youth.
How would people respond to that, though?
But see, this is the thing. Do what like we said, do what fits. Like for instance, if the baby were to get on there and say, look, everybody, go fill this petition out for brother Ahmad, for what happened. That is something that would fit his demographic, would fit his fan base, would be effective. He does not, however, need to go on there talking about the damn coronavirus and studies of the CDC and stats and shit. Like, he doesn't need to do that. But there are things that people do, whatever you can do. Like I said from the beginning, you should never.
So here's a quick question. Question. Could you actually see him doing that?
He may have did it. I don't follow him.
So let me answer.
That's a good point. You're right.
I think it's very possible he could have done it, but I think artists almost need to be. Let me say this: the company that I work for, whenever it comes to making statements to the media, that always goes through a person, right? And so it won't be me talking to the media. It'll be someone who's trained in that. But the few times that I've had to do that, we are prepped. We are prepared. This is the statement that you make. And you read it. You understand it. Before you get up there, if you have any questions, you ask the people. We go through legal. That's what has to happen. Before.
So what you're saying is there's no chance of the baby making a statement then?
No,
I don't think.
Because if it has to go through the record label, it ain't happening.
Like I don't know. I think first of all, I
I
think
don't agree,
putting
man.
like the baby and 6ix9ine in the same category. I think the baby is not a dumb dude. Like
Yeah.
Right.
that.
I agree.
I think he knows things. I think he's not a. I mean, he's a live wire, but I think he got something to say. You know what I'm saying? So I think if you ask him about
What does the
community
baby
stuff,
have to say, Speed?
I'm
Well,
not saying
look.
in his music. I'm not saying in his music. I'm saying
Okay,
in
all
it
right.
Oh,
in his. I mean, we talking about
His
artists
name
like
is
that.
the baby.
We
Well,
talking about
come on.
life commentary. You talking about? I mean, I ain't asking the dude who we should be voting for president for. I'm saying if you ask dude like, what
That
do
was
you think,
Vice's point.
Mr. The Baby?
Right.
What do you think is wrong in your, you grew up in the hood, right? What do you think is wrong in the hood? What if you had a question for Mr. Joe Biden or Mr. Trump? What would your question be? I think you could ask that dude a question like that.
Everybody got a
Let me
voice,
throw this
man.
out. Let me throw this out
Everybody have
here
a
too.
voice and they represent people, man. Go ahead, Garbs. My bad. Go ahead,
Let me
bro.
throw. Oh, it's all good. So here's the thing that we also have to really look at. How many times is he put in the situation that he's asked those type of questions though? So in a lot of cases, we do have to look and blame the media because they're not trying to get the opinion on these people. They ask them a bunch of surface questions and a
It's
bunch of
possible those artists shy away from it because they're afraid of their image.
Those artists shouldn't be speaking.
yes.
That's not your thing. Some people just can't.
think that there may be a mixture though because I think that
Well,
a lot of media does not.
well, you know what though? I'm
no,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Garbs.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well,
All
go
right,
ahead.
I'm gonna go. Let me go. So in a lot of cases, media tries to ask questions that are going to play into certain artists and certain things and that they discuss. Like even if you watch Vlad TV, he may get in depth on certain things with certain people, but he's digging into certain things that these artists have said or
That can possibly incriminate them.
but if they're willing to do it, that's on them. You know what I'm saying? So imagine if Vlad or other media people were getting in depth with these street artists and getting in depth on political issues or conscious topics, that are affecting their listeners.
So you bring up a good point, and that kind of goes into one of the other questions, for today. Do we have, how can it be problematic for these artists to speak on social issues? I mean, a lot of you have already said that, well, hey, if you're well versed on it, then great. But if you're not well versed on it, then don't talk. But I'll tell you this, there's a lot of people, artists and non-artists alike, who have a habit of talking about things that they think they're well versed on, but they're not. So how can it be problematic, with an artist in their career?
What's the young cat from Chicago that was always making waves a couple years ago? What's his name?
Chief Keef?
Chief Keef. There you go. Now, the thing about like that dude came to the realization that his bag was tied to the level of crazy that he was willing to show out there. So that's a problem. That's a problem too. That's an element of what you just said, Haiku. If I recognize that everything I say is tied to like, as crazy as I can get, or as wild as I can get, or I can say F
6ix9ine.
all these old dudes, all that kind of stuff, then that's what you're gonna get. You ain't gonna get no real, commentary from an artist like that whole persona is crazy, live wired, don't give a fuck, whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying?
Don't give a fuck. God,
Yeah.
don't give a fuck. Yeah,
Well, I think that we also have to respect somebody if they're like, hey, I'm not educated on something. I'm not trying to really discuss that because I don't know enough. We got to respect that, if somebody says that, because, they're saying that for a reason, not just because always because they're trying to stay out of it, just because no. If they don't
I got a
know,
quick
I
question.
Okay, go ahead.
Who do we think is actually speaking on issues presently?
Who is?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time thinking of one.
I mean,
I
that
think
and
a lot
that is
of
actually like in line with what I was about to say, speak up and say, is that I think maybe one of the bigger issues is those that are qualified are not doing it. Those that are in a position of high celebrity and have the intelligence, they're not doing it. So I think, like, going back to the Charles Barkley thing, I'm not a role model, and even like the whole Last Dance documentary's been on. Everybody talk about Jordan, how he didn't step up in certain situations. It's like the situation. I think that's difference between them at that point and like LeBron and Kobe and D Wade and all of these guys now is social media. I mean, like, you have no excuse not to give your opinion on things because that's all social media is based on. In the 90s, they didn't have anything like that. So I'll give those guys a pass. But anybody who has an opinion, who has a little bit of background on the situation, you have a huge fan base. I think that it behooves you to step up and speak on subjects, flat out. I think too many people are being quiet. I'm sort of disappointed on the lack of hip hop, response to anything that's really going on right now.
And that
Nobody's really
was my
putting out
question.
any good music. Nobody's putting out anything. Like, they're trying to figure out how to make their bag, but nobody's really being influential right now.
I think I had told Haiku a little while ago, maybe a few years ago. I told him, I said, man, it's going to be a whole bunch of Public Enemies and Native Tongues just because of all the shootings and all the things that were going on. And for some reason, that hasn't come around. You would think that it's the perfect time for someone to jump in that lane and take off. But I can't think of too many that are taking advantage of that.
I think that's the microwave nature of it right now. It's like you gotta hit so fast. Like you gotta touch people and reach people and connect with people so fast in order to get to that kind of like, stratosphere or something like that. So
But like Vice said, with social media, you can hit hella fast now.
Yeah.
I got 2 points with that.
If you wanted to.
With first off, dealing with the circumstances that we are all under right now, this is a completely new world and situation and circumstances than that have occurred than people have ever dealt with that are alive currently. So we have to take that into consideration, one. But two, it depends on what, the artist that you're looking at and following, because there's a lot of people that are speaking on things that they may not be in the super duper huge popularity, but, I know just from certain people that I follow, like Willie D posts up some stuff, and has interviews and talking about people. You have Mike Tyson, who's sitting there and having communication with people, and they're putting out their perspective on his interviews. And there's a lot of different people that are doing it. They may not be the young 22, 25-year-olds that are the most popular or quote unquote important to the culture currently, but there's still a lot of people speaking out on things. And if they have the ability to touch just a handful of the younger generation with their thoughts and perspectives, I still think that makes some sort of a difference.
They ain't like the 90s. They can't shut y'all down. Start speaking your mind.
So right. with all of that, it's been, I, for one, if I were going to give my opinion, I like hearing the opinions of artists. I enjoy it. Even if I disagree or agree with them. And the other thing I would say is that, one thing that we always say in the business, one thing that I've heard in the business is give the people what they want. I think the people need to start demanding or asking for that, more of that from the artist. And hopefully the artist will see, like, you know what, you actually want that? Okay, I can do that. Now that might change the lane. That being the case, when we're talking about opinions, we want the opinions of all of the viewers. What do y'all think on these subjects? What do y'all think? Check out the show and y'all know what to do. You like, you comment, you subscribe. Turntable is out. Peace.